All right, today we're taking a deep dive, a real geographical journey across India. We're going to see how everything, from its absolutely massive mountains down to its ancient plateaus, has really shaped this incredible subcontinent. So, let's jump right in.
Okay, first things first, we need to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this place. We're talking about 3.28 million square kilometers. Now that's already a huge number, right? But what's really mind-boggling isn't just the size of the land itself, it's who and just how many people actually live on it.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at that contrast. India has just 2.4% of the world's total land area. A tiny sliver, really. But it supports a staggering 17% of all the people on Earth. Just think about that for a second. That single fact right there tells you everything you need to know about the immense pressure on its land and the huge importance of its geography.
So, where do we start our journey? Well, let's head to the very top, to the magnificent Himalayan crown. You know, these mountains are so much more than just pretty scenery. They're a massive climatic barrier, they're the birthplace of life-giving rivers, and they act as a truly formidable border.
And geologically, the Himalayas are actually considered young. They're what we call fold mountains. And what does that mean? Well, think of it like this. They were formed, and get this, they are still rising from the insane pressure of the Indian tectonic plate smashing into the Eurasian plate. This constant movement makes the whole area incredibly dynamic, geologically speaking.
But here's the thing, the Himalayas aren't just one big wall of rock. No way. It's actually a super complex system of 4 distinct ranges, all running parallel to each other. So if you were to travel from north to south, you'd first hit the Trans-Himalayas. Then you'd get to the really big guys, the Himadri, or Great Himalayas. After that comes the Himachal. That's where you find a lot of the famous hill stations. And finally, you'd reach the outermost range, the Shivaliks.
And here's a great little piece of trivia that trips a lot of people up. You know K2, right? The second highest mountain on the entire planet? Well, everyone assumes it's in the Great Himalayas with Everest, but it's not. It's actually in the Karakoram range, which is part of the Trans-Himalayas. A small detail for sure, but a really important one. So, all that snow and ice up in the Himalayas has to go somewhere, right? Well, from those glaciers, these mighty lifelines are born. India's great river systems. I mean, these rivers, fed by both melting snow and those powerful monsoons, are what carved out the vast plains and have nurtured entire civilizations for thousands of years.
Now, India basically has 2 major river systems, and they have completely different personalities. They're like night and day. On one hand, you have the Himalayan rivers. They're born from glaciers, so they're perennial. That just means they flow all year round. But then you have the peninsular rivers. They're mostly fed by rain, which makes them seasonal. Their flow can change dramatically depending on the monsoons.
And each of these major rivers has its own unique story. You've got the Ganga, of course, the longest in India. Then there's the mighty Brahmaputra, which takes this wild U-turn to even enter the country. Head south, and you meet the Godavari, the longest river in the peninsula. Then you have these 2 rebels, the Narmada and Tapi, that decide to flow west when most flow east. And then there's the Kaveri, which is super clever. It manages to get water from 2 different monsoons. Okay, to really get how rainfall works in the south, you have to know about this one concept, the rain shadow. It's actually pretty simple. So these monsoon winds, full of moisture, come in from the sea and slam into a mountain range, like the Western Ghats. They're forced to go up, they cool down, and they dump all their rain on one side. But what about the other side? Well, by the time the winds get there, they're dry. That side, the leeward side, gets almost no rain. That's a rain shadow. And it's why you can have these super lush green areas right next to vast dry regions.
All right, let's keep moving south, away from the river plains. Now we're entering the ancient heartland of India, the Peninsular Plateau. And when I say ancient, I mean ancient. This is one of the oldest, most stable chunks of rock on the entire planet, a piece left over from the old supercontinent, Gondwana.
So this giant plateau is bordered on both sides by mountain ranges called the Ghats. And honestly, they could not be more different from each other. The Western Ghats are like a solid, continuous, high wall, perfect for catching all that monsoon rain we talked about. The Eastern Ghats, on the other hand, they're much lower and they're all broken up, kind of chopped into pieces by all those big rivers flowing out to the sea.
And tucked away inside this ancient plateau is a region that basically powers modern India. It's the Chota Nagpur Plateau, and people call it the mineral heartland of India for a very good reason. We're talking about massive reserves of coal, iron ore, you name it. It's literally the bedrock of India's entire industrial economy.
Okay, we've covered the mountains and the heartland.
Now, our journey takes us right to the edges of the subcontinent. This is where we're going to find these long, beautiful coastlines, remote island chains, and even vast deserts. And each one has its own unique story to tell.
And just like the Ghats, India's two coastlines are a study in contrasts. The west coast is narrow, it's steeper, and the rivers there tend to form these deep estuaries. But the east coast? It's much broader, with a gentler slope. This gives the rivers room to spread out, drop all their sediment, and form these massive, incredibly fertile deltas. And this geography creates totally different features, right? You get the famous backwaters or Kyles in Kerala on the west, and huge lagoons like Chilika Lake on the east.
And we can't forget the islands. Way off the mainland, you've got these two very different territories. First, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These are actually the tops of a submerged mountain range. They're volcanic. In fact, they're home to Barren Island, which is India's only active volcano. Then on the other side, you have the Lakshadweep Islands. They're not volcanic at all. They're atolls, built up entirely by coral. It's a totally unique and incredibly fragile ecosystem.
So, after all that, what's the result of all this wildly different geography? What does it all add up to? Well, you get a truly breathtaking tapestry of life. All these things we've talked about, the mountains, the rivers, the plateaus, the coasts, they create endless different habitats, which in turn support an absolutely incredible diversity of plants and animals.
And you can see this diversity perfectly just by looking at the forests. The most common type you'll find are the tropical deciduous forests, the kind that shed their leaves when it gets dry. But that's just the beginning. You also have these super dense tropical evergreen rainforests. You've got tough-as-nails thorn forests in the dry parts, and of course, the montane forests that literally climb up the sides of the mountains, changing completely as they go higher.
And of course, where you get a unique landscape, you get unique wildlife. It just makes sense. India's national parks and sanctuaries protect some of the rarest animals on the planet. I mean, you've got Jim Corbett, which was the country's very first national park back in 1936. You have Gir Forest, the only place in the world you can still find the Asiatic lion. And then there's the absolutely unbelievable Kibo Lamjao. Get this, it's the world's only floating national park. Yeah, you heard that right. Floating.
So we've journeyed all the way from the highest peaks down to the most distant islands. And that brings us to one final, really crucial question. Every single one of these systems we've talked about is connected. The glaciers feeding the rivers, the monsoons watering the plains, the coastlines protecting the land. And right now, all of it is facing this unprecedented pressure from a changing climate. So the real question is, how will this ancient, incredible geography face what might be its greatest challenge yet? That is a story that's still being written.